Now today we'll be revealing how Marc Spelmann did his trick on AGT the Champions, did a couple of cool card tricks, and then by the end of it, switched himself out for Shin Lim. Did this really cool switch, completely surprised everyone. Now if you want to know how it's done, you have to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you get notified because I do have a giveaway coming up in 3 subscribers because I'm going to hit 400. So you will want to not miss out on any of that. I do card tricks and deck reviews and coin tricks and everything else in between. So now let's get into how it was done. So if you haven't watched the performance already, I'll link that down in the description. You should definitely go watch that because a lot of this is going to be kind of confusing. You'll not know quite what I'm talking about. So first, he walks out on stage and he says, anyone can be Magician X. And then he puts his mask on his face. This is going to come back at the end of the video. You will not want to miss this part. So he has all of these different colors and numbers and letters and symbols on this big old sheet, as you already saw. And each one of the judges picks one. So Simon picked a color, he picked yellow. Heidi picked the symbol, which was the smiley face, and they all picked one. And then he takes each of them and he puts them in this holder, like all 4 in this 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he turns around the first 3 and they're faces of the judges. Now, that's kind of crazy in and of itself, but then he turns it around, the rest of them, and he shows that they're not any faces, they're just regular acts. So first, how does he force that? That's the first part of this trick. So it's called the black art principle. Now, you'll realize that everything behind the card before he places it in is completely black. So when it's just like this, everything is black, like black enough to where if you put your hand in front of your face, you couldn't see your own hand. It's blacker than black. So there's actually a card already in it that has a black back. Now let's just say this face represents Simon. Simon chose this card, puts it in here. Now you can only see the color yellow, and then he basically just does a double lift and shows Simon's face. So that is how the first 3 are done. Technically it's how the 4th is done, but I'll get into that in a second. So all 3 of the first 3 have been predicted correctly, even though they are free choices, and that is the black art principle. Now when he turns it around, you realize that Howie's face is still on there. Now if Howie's face is still on there, that means he chose a different one, right? So his face isn't going to be on the back of the one that he chose. Now he then says, well, if your face is over here, I mean, you must have one of the magic acts, because that was on all the rest of the cards. So then what is your favorite magic act of all time? Now, he says, Shin Lim. He says, no offense, I know you're a magician, but it has to be Shin Lim. Now, this is a force. It has to be, because if this wouldn't have worked, the whole trick would have failed. Because, one, when he turns it around, that was the first black art principle that he had. This side said Shin Lim. So clearly that wouldn't have worked. And in a second I'll explain how he switches himself and then Shin Lim actually appears on stage. So clearly this wouldn't have worked if it wasn't a force. Now there's really only 2 ways this could have happened. Either number 1, it's more of a mental thing to where he's a magician, so he already has magicians in the back of his mind. Howie had been tweeting about him quite a bit recently, and just the fact that that's going on and that Shin Lim has both won regular AGT and champions recently. That means it's kind of just in the back of his mind. So that either he's just hoping, but most magicians just don't hope. They have to know what's going to happen because that would ruin the whole effect. So the only other way is that it could have been like how he could have been in on that part of it. I don't really like to say that, but it's not Penn and Teller where you can't do that. So that is technically a possibility. Now, either way, even if it was just the first one and he kind of had to just hope that he said the right one, Howie did end up saying Shin Lim, and then we turned around. This one hit Howie's card instead of having his face, it said Shin Lim. But then he walked out on stage, took his mask off, and instead of being Marc Spelmann, was Shin Lim. Now, how did he do that? When he turned around, and there was all of the cards, so there was yellow and the smiley face and all the letters and numbers and everything else. Instead of just turning it like this and staying on the front side of this, he actually walked around behind it. So I'll set this down real quick and show you what I mean. He takes this, and here's my finger is him. Oh gosh, that just got dark real quick. He takes this, and he walks around behind it, and then comes out the other side. when he does that, he does a switch with Shin Lim. Shin Lim's wearing the same outfit, he's doing everything the same. Now Shin Lim is a different size, so if you actually go back and look at it, you will see that like Shin Lim's head is bigger, or his body type is different. And you'll see that there's a minute difference there. It looks extremely similar, so you wouldn't really know, and since they're using a voiceover in like a voice modifier, you wouldn't be able to tell. But at the end of the day, you can tell a little bit if you actually are looking for it. Just most people aren't looking for that type of thing when it actually happens. So clearly this was absolutely brilliant. Shin Lim did a switch with Marc Spelmann, well technically with Marc Spelmann, with Shin Lim. He forced multiple cards when actually using a free selection. Free selection forces are absolutely beautiful. So whenever you can do something like that, even though it's a beginner force, something like the Cull Force, even though it's a free selection that turns into a force, something along those lines, are absolutely brilliant. Then he used a black art principle, and then he ended up doing a switch with Shin Lim, who is like crazy famous. So if you guys did like this review and this reveal of how he did it, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. This is Card Perfect, signing off.